I woke up to the sound of my phone exploding with messages and the unmistakable crunch of boots on brick outside my bedroom window. By the time I realized what was happening, my only access road had been turned into a red brick wall like something out of a medieval siege. And the woman responsible was standing on top of it, hands on her hips, smiling like she'd just conquered a small country. At first I thought I was still half asleep. I live far enough outside town that unexpected noises usually mean a stray cow, a delivery driver who ignored the gate sign, or the occasional early morning hunter who can't read a map. But this was different. This was deliberate, loud, organized. When I pulled the curtains back, I saw stacked bricks, wet mortar, and a rented cement mixer idling like it was proud of itself. My access road runs straight from the county-maintained road to my property. It's the only legal way in or out, deeded, surveyed, and on every county map going back decade. I know that because I've had to explain it multiple times over the years, usually to people who confuse confidence with authority. Standing in the middle of my road was Karen. She was wearing a blazer that had no business being near wet concrete, sunglasses that belonged indoors, and an expression that said she believed this was all completely normal. Two guys in mismatched work boots were laying bricks under her supervision, glancing nervously toward my house like they knew they were about to be part of a story they didn't want to finish. I stepped outside, still in yesterday's jeans, and the smell of mortar hit me immediately. Fresh. That meant this had started recently. Very recently. "What the hell is this?" I said, not shouting yet, just loud enough to cut through the mixer. Karen turned slowly, like a villain in a low-budget movie, and smiled. "Oh good, you're awake," she said, waving a clipboard. "I was hoping you'd see this before trying to drive through." Drive through. My road. The road I used every single day. "You bricked my road," I said. "No," she replied calmly, tapping the clipboard. "I corrected a violation." That was the moment I knew this wasn't just entitlement. This was escalation. Karen had been the self-appointed enforcer of the nearby HOA for months, even though my property was never part of it. She liked to pretend proximity equaled authority. If something existed near her neighborhood, she believed it belonged to her rulebook. Fences, trees, ditches, even the sky if she thought she could regulate it. I walked closer, stopping just short of the wet bricks. The wall was already waist-high and growing. "This is a county easement," I said. "You can't touch it." She adjusted her sunglasses and leaned closer, lowering her voice like she was letting me in on a secret. "I spoke to people," she said. "Important people." I'd heard that line before. It usually meant a friend of a friend who once emailed someone in zoning. "You didn't," I said. She smiled wider. "We'll see." I pulled my phone out and started recording, not because I planned to post it, but because experience had taught me that reality tends to rewrite itself around people like Karen unless you document every second. She noticed immediately. "Don't record me," she snapped. "I'm recording my property," I replied. She laughed, sharp and dismissive. "This isn't your property anymore. That road creates safety issues for the community." The community. Always the community. Behind her, one of the workers paused and looked at her like he wanted to disappear into the cement mixer. I caught his eye and shrugged. He shrugged back. We were both thinking the same thing. "This road has existed longer than your HOA, I said. "Longer than your house." She flipped a page on her clipboard dramatically, as if facts were optional. "The HOA voted," she said. "Emergency powers. Emergency powers. Over a private access road at 6 in the morning." I stepped back, dialed the county public works number, and put it on speaker. Karen scoffed like she'd already won. "Good luck," she said. "They're very busy." The line rang twice. "County Public Works," a tired voice answered. "Hi," I said, keeping my eyes locked on Karen. "Someone is actively constructing a brick wall across my deeded access road. Right now." There was a pause. "They're doing what?" the voice asked. "I'm looking at it," I said. "Fresh mortar." Another pause, shorter this time. Stay where you are, he said. Don't touch anything. Karen rolled her eyes. I told you, she said quietly. I talk to people. I ended the call and slipped my phone into my pocket. The wind picked up slightly, carrying the sound of a truck approaching from the county road. Karen heard it too. Her posture stiffened just a bit. 2 county trucks pulled up, followed by a third with hazard lights already on. The doors opened almost in unison. High-visibility vests, clipboards, tablets, people who did not look amused. The lead supervisor walked straight toward the brick wall, crouched down, and pressed a finger into the mortar. He stood back up and looked at Karen. Who authorized this? He asked. Karen stepped forward confidently. I did. HOA emergency resolution. He didn't even blink. He turned to his crew. Start dismantling, he said. Carefully. Karen's face drained of color so fast it was almost impressive. You can't do that, she said, her voice climbing. This is a safety action. The supervisor turned back to her slowly. This is a county access easement, he said. You obstructed it. That's a violation. Her mouth opened and closed like she was buffering. I spoke to zoning, she said weakly. He nodded. We'll speak to zoning too. Behind him, the crew had already begun pulling bricks free. The wall that had taken hours to build started disappearing in minutes. Karen turned toward me, eyes wide, furious, confused. You told on me, she hissed. I smiled for the first time that morning. No, I said. You told on yourself. By noon, the road was clear, the bricks were stacked on a pallet with a violation notice taped to them, and Karen was standing alone on the shoulder of the road, staring at a future she hadn't planned for. And this was only the beginning. By the time the county trucks rolled away, the quiet felt unnatural, like the pause after an explosion when your ears are still ringing. My road was open again, scarred with wet patches where bricks had been lifted, but passable. Perfectly legal. Perfectly mine. Karen, however, didn't leave. She stood there long after the workers packed up, staring at the cleared stretch like it had personally betrayed her. I figured that would be the end of it for the day. I was wrong. An hour later, my phone buzzed with a notification from a neighbor who lived closer to the HOA entrance. It was a picture of a printed notice taped to the community bulletin board. Big font. Bold heading. My address listed right at the top. Temporary access suspension due to safety non-compliance. I laughed out loud. Not because it was funny, but because it was so aggressively wrong it almost felt like performance art. According to the notice, my access road posed an immediate hazard to HOA residents. The solution, apparently, was rerouting traffic through an internal HOA lane that didn't connect to my property, didn't cross my land, and didn't exist in any legal sense. At the bottom was Karen's name, printed neatly, followed by a title she'd invented for herself. I took screenshots, sent them to the same county contact from earlier, and went back outside. Karen's car was still parked near the road, angled in a way that suggested ownership. She was on her phone, pacing, gesturing wildly, performing outrage for someone on the other end. She noticed me and immediately ended the call. You're not allowed to use this road, she said, pointing at the asphalt like she'd just redrawn reality. I just did, I replied. County cleared it. She stepped closer, lowering her voice again, that conspiratorial whisper she used when she thought intimidation worked better than volume. You embarrassed me, she said. In front of officials. I shrugged. You bricked a public easement at dawn. Her jaw tightened. The HOA will escalate. That word again. Escalate. People like Karen loved it because it sounded powerful without meaning anything specific. I went inside, made coffee, and pulled every document I'd ever kept related to that road. Deeds, surveys, easement agreements, maintenance records. I laid them out on the table like cards in a hand I'd been waiting to play. By noon, the HOA Facebook group was on fire. Screenshots started pouring in. Karen had posted a long rant about rogue landowners and community sabotage. Comments rolled in fast, some cheering her on, others asking uncomfortable questions she didn't answer. Then came the email. Subject line, Notice of Hearing. The HOA board had scheduled an emergency meeting to address my non-compliance. They expected my attendance. I stared at the screen, reread it twice, and laughed again. Not because it was funny. Because it was desperate. I replied with one sentence. My property is not subject to HOA authority. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. Karen. I let it go to voicemail. The message she left was unhinged. She accused me of harassment, of interfering with community safety, of abusing county resources. She warned me about fines. She warned me about legal action. She warned me about consequences in a tone that suggested she genuinely believed she could summon them. That evening, a sheriff's cruiser drove slowly past my driveway, then turned around and parked. The deputy got out, calm, hands visible, posture neutral. I met him halfway down the drive. Evening, he said. We got a call about a dispute. I nodded. Over an access road. He checked his tablet. That's what I thought. He didn't ask me to explain. He already knew. Instead, he asked me to confirm my name, my address, and whether anyone was currently blocking my access. No, I said. Not anymore. He glanced toward the road, then back at me. Good. Because if they do it again, it won't be a civil issue. I didn't ask him to clarify. I didn't need to. After he left, I sat on the porch and watched the sun drop behind the trees, thinking it was over for the night. That's when the cones appeared. Bright orange traffic cones, lined up neatly across the entrance to my road. Not bricks this time. No mortar. Just plastic authority. Karen's SUV was parked nearby, hazard lights on. She stood next to it, arms crossed, daring me to challenge her. This is temporary, she said loudly, making sure anyone within earshot could hear. Until compliance is verified. I stepped over a cone and moved it aside. She lunged forward. Do not touch that. I picked up another and stacked it with the first. You're obstructing access again, I said. On camera. Her face went red, then pale. I'm protecting the community, she snapped. I finished clearing the cones and walked past her without another word. Behind me, she screamed that she was calling her lawyer. By the time I reached my front door, my phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a neighbor. It was the county. Short message. Simple. Please document any further obstructions. Our legal department is now involved. I looked back down the road. Karen was still standing there, phone pressed to her ear, shouting into the quiet evening like it owed her something. She thought this was still a power struggle. She had no idea it had already become a paper trail. By morning, the paper trail had grown teeth. I woke up to an email from the county legal department stamped with a reference number, 2 attachments, and language that was very careful not to sound angry while clearly being fed up. They wanted a formal statement, timeline, photos, any communications from the HOA, anything Karen had put in writing. I gave them everything. While I was uploading files, my phone buzzed again. Another neighbor message. This one wasn't panicked or amused. It was cautious. She's telling people you're getting sued, the message read. Like today. I sighed and took my coffee outside. The road was still clear. No cones. No bricks. No Karen in sight. That alone felt suspicious. Around 10, a black SUV pulled up that I didn't recognize. Clean. Shiny. Parked just far enough onto the shoulder to imply confidence. Karen stepped out wearing a different blazer, darker, sharper, like she'd upgraded her personality overnight. She wasn't alone. A man followed her out. Mid-40s. Crisp shirt. Legal haircut. Briefcase he hadn't scuffed yet. This was new. I stayed where I was. Let them approach. Karen walked half a step ahead of him, already rehearsed. This is our attorney, she announced before either of us spoke. He's here to resolve this. The attorney nodded politely. Neutral. Professional. The kind of guy who'd already asked uncomfortable questions on the drive over. I'm just here to understand the situation, he said. I gestured toward the road. Happy to help. Karen jumped in immediately. The HOA has concerns about unauthorized access usage and… The attorney raised a hand slightly. Not dismissive. Just controlling the flow. Before we go further, he said, turning to me, are you a member of the HOA? No, I replied. He nodded. Is any portion of this road within HOA jurisdiction? No. Another nod. He pulled out a tablet and scrolled. And this access road is deeded? Yes. Karen shifted her weight. That's disputed. The attorney looked up at her. Is it? She hesitated. Just a fraction too long. I mean, she said, it's complicated. He sighed quietly, the way people do when they realize their morning is about to get longer. Ms. Carter, he said, using her actual last name for the first time, you told me this road was internal to the community. It serves the community, she snapped. That's not what I asked. I didn't smile. I didn't need to. The attorney turned back to me. Have there been physical obstructions placed on this road? Yes, I said. Twice. Once with bricks. Once with traffic cones. Karen cut in. Temporary safety measures. He looked at her again. Did the county authorize them? Silence. That's what I thought, he said. Karen's face tightened. You're supposed to be on my side. I am on the side of keeping you out of trouble, he replied calmly. Which requires facts. She scoffed. This is harassment. The attorney tapped his tablet. The county has already issued a preliminary notice. That stopped her. What notice? She asked sharply. He turned the screen toward her. Her posture collapsed in real time. Not dramatically. Just enough to reveal panic under the performance. They can't do that, she said. They already did, he replied. And they're not done. She spun toward me. You escalated this. I kept my voice even. You built a wall. The attorney closed his tablet and exhaled. I strongly advise you, he said to Karen, to cease all action related to this road immediately. She stared at him like he'd betrayed her. You're firing me, she said. He shook his head. I'm protecting myself. He turned to me. If you don't mind, I'll be sending you my contact information. Any further interference, please loop me in. I nodded. Gladly. He left without another word, climbing back into the SUV and driving away like he couldn't put distance between himself and Karen fast enough. Karen stayed. She watched the car disappear, then rounded on me with a look that wasn't entitled anymore. It was desperate. You think you've won, she said. I think you should stop, I replied. She laughed, sharp and humorless. I can't. That was the most honest thing she'd said yet. By afternoon, the HOA emergency meeting went ahead without me. I didn't need to attend to know how it went. My phone lit up with messages from residents who'd never spoken to me before. Apologies. Questions. Quiet admissions that they hadn't known she didn't have authority. Then came the surveyors. 2 county trucks, this time marked clearly. Bright flags. Measuring wheels. A man with a tripod setting up directly at the edge of my road. Karen arrived just in time to see them drive stakes into the ground. She stormed up, shouting before she even reached them. You can't mark that, she yelled. That's community land. One of the surveyors didn't even look at her. He kept working. Another turned calmly. Ma'am, please step back. She puffed up. I'm the HOA compliance officer. He smiled faintly. No, you're not. She lunged forward, waving her clipboard like a badge. That's when the deputy arrived again. Same cruiser. Same calm. He stepped between her and the surveyors without touching her. Ma'am, he said evenly, you've been warned. She stared at him, then at me, then at the bright flags fluttering in the dirt like they were mocking her. You did this, she said quietly. I shook my head. You did. As the sun set, the flags remained. Bright. Official. Unmovable. Karen left without another word. But the look she gave me as she drove away wasn't defeat. It was calculation. And that worried me more than the bricks ever had. The flags didn't last the night. I knew something was wrong the moment I stepped outside the next morning and felt that hollow drop in my stomach. The bright markers the county surveyors had planted were gone. Every single one. No torn soil, no snapped stakes, no evidence left behind except faint footprints in the dew where someone had been careful enough to pull them straight out. That wasn't impulse behavior. That was planning. I stood there longer than I should have, scanning the road, the shoulder, the tree line, half expecting Karen to step out and announce it like a magic trick. She didn't. The silence was worse. I called the county before I even finished my coffee. They were removed, I said. All of them. The woman on the line didn't sound surprised. She sounded tired. Did you touch them? She asked. No. Did anyone have permission to touch them? She asked. No. She exhaled slowly. Okay. Stay put. That phrase again. By mid-morning, the trucks were back. Different crew this time. More official. They remarked everything, but this time they didn't use flags. They drove metal stakes deep enough that removing them would take tools and effort. They painted the road edge with fluorescent markings that looked like they belonged at a crime scene. Karen arrived halfway through. She didn't storm in this time. She parked neatly, walked calmly, smiled at the surveyors like she'd never seen them before. Oh good, she said brightly. You're fixing the mistake. No one responded. She turned toward me, smile still glued in place. I filed a formal complaint last night. I folded my arms. About what? Unauthorized markings, she said. Property defacement. The lead surveyor finally looked up. Ma'am, please don't interfere. She laughed lightly. Interfere. That's funny. I noticed then that she was recording. Phone held just low enough to pretend she wasn't. That was new too. By noon, the markings were done, the documentation complete, and the crew left with promises to forward everything to legal. Karen waited until they were gone before she moved again. You think the county is on your side, she said quietly. They're not. I didn't answer. They tolerate you, she continued. That's different. I turned and walked back toward my house. She followed, keeping just enough distance to avoid being obvious. You're isolated, she said. That's why you're easy. I stopped. Stop following me, I said. She smiled again. Public road. I turned fully this time. This ends when you leave. Her smile dropped. You don't get to tell me that anymore. That afternoon, I received a certified letter. Not from the HOA. From a private firm. Cease and desist. Allegations of harassment. Claims that my actions had caused emotional distress, reputational harm, and financial loss to an HOA officer acting in good faith. I sat at my kitchen table reading it twice, then a third time slower, noting the careful phrasing, the lack of specifics, the absence of anything that actually accused me of something provable. It was theater. Expensive theater. The county called an hour later. She contacted zoning directly, the attorney said. Filed an appeal. On what grounds? I asked. On the grounds that she believes the easement was improperly recorded. I laughed. I couldn't help it. The attorney didn't. She's also filed a request for a temporary injunction, he continued, to prevent you from using the road until it's resolved. That wiped the smile off my face. Can she do that? I asked. She can file, he said. Winning is another matter. But it creates noise. That night, the noise got louder. Karen went live. Someone sent me the link before I even knew it existed. There she was on camera, framed perfectly, voice trembling just enough to sound victimized, telling a story where she was the protector of a community under attack by an uncooperative landowner abusing government connections. She cried at the right moment. She named no names but made it obvious who she meant. She said words like intimidation and safety and fear. The comments were split. Some questioned her. Others fed the narrative hungrily. I watched for 30 seconds, then closed it. By morning, there was a new sign at the entrance to my road. Private road under dispute. No trespassing. It was staked into the ground crookedly, printed on cheap board, but positioned like it had authority. Karen's SUV was parked nearby. This time she didn't wait for me to speak. "You ignore legal notices," she said. "That's not smart." "You put up a sign on my road," I replied. "It's informational." I pulled out my phone and dialed the sheriff. She scoffed. "You're really doing this again." The deputy arrived faster than I expected. Different one this time. Younger. Less patient. He looked at the sign, then at Karen. "Did you place this?" he asked. She hesitated. "On advice of counsel." He raised an eyebrow. "Whose counsel?" She didn't answer. He turned to me. "This is private property," he said. "She doesn't have standing." He pulled the sign out of the ground and leaned it against her SUV. "Ma'am," he said, "if you continue to interfere, next time we won't be having a conversation." Her face hardened. Not panicked. Not embarrassed. Angry. "You think this is over," she said to me as the deputy walked away. "I haven't even started." That night, I slept with my phone on the nightstand, volume up, documents open on my laptop like a shield. Karen wasn't reacting anymore. She was committing. And commitment like that only ends one of two ways. The injunction hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning, which felt deliberate. Middle of the week. Middle of the workday. Perfect timing if your goal was to inconvenience someone and call it justice. Karen showed up early. I know because one of the clerks recognized my name and quietly told me she'd been pacing the hallway for half an hour, rehearsing under her breath like she was about to audition for a role she'd already convinced herself she deserved. I arrived with a folder so thick it barely closed. The courtroom itself was small, functional, and unimpressed by theatrics. The judge was older, the kind of person who'd heard every version of "I didn't mean to" that existed. He barely glanced up when Karen's attorney introduced himself. That alone told me something. Karen sat stiffly behind him, nodding too much, whispering corrections he ignored. Every time I glanced her way, she was already staring, eyes sharp, lips pressed tight. Her attorney opened with a speech that sounded polished but hollow. He talked about safety concerns, community welfare, and an urgent need to preserve the status quo. He avoided specifics like they were radioactive. When it was my turn, I didn't speak much. I didn't need to. The county did. Their attorney stood, calm, methodical, and laid everything out in chronological order. Photos, date, recorded calls, survey records, enforcement notices, video of the brick wall going up, video of it coming down. The judge finally leaned forward. "Ms. Carter," he said, looking directly at Karen, "did you authorize the construction of a wall across a deeded access road?" She opened her mouth. Her attorney stood quickly. "Your Honor, my client acted under." "I asked her," the judge said. The room went quiet. "Yes," Karen said. "For safety." The judge nodded once. "And did the county authorize this?" She hesitated. Long enough to answer the question without speaking. The judge exhaled slowly and turned back to the attorneys. "I'm denying the injunction," he said. "And I'm forwarding this matter for further review." Karen's attorney froze. "For what?" he asked. The judge tapped the file. "Potential interference with public infrastructure." Karen whispered something sharp and urgent. The judge raised a hand. "Ms. Carter, if you interrupt again, I will have you removed." She slumped back, face flushed, hands shaking slightly in her lap. Outside the courtroom, her attorney pulled her aside immediately. I didn't try to listen. I didn't need to. His body language said everything. Controlled anger. Rapid gestures. Someone realizing they'd been handed a mess they weren't paid enough to clean. I walked out into the sunlight feeling lighter than I had in weeks. That feeling lasted about 10 minutes. When I got home, my driveway was blocked. Not with bricks. Not with cones. With cars. 4 of them, parked nose to tail across the entrance, hazard lights blinking like a smug warning. HOA decals visible on every windshield. Karen stood off to the side, phone in hand, already filming. "You can't do this," I said, keeping my voice steady. She smiled for the camera. "Peaceful protest." I glanced at the nearest car. License plate visible. Driver still inside, looking uncomfortable. "You're blocking an access road," I said. She tilted her head. "We're exercising our rights." I stepped back and dialed the sheriff. Karen laughed. "You really don't learn." This time, 3 cruisers arrived. Not one. The deputies didn't argue. They didn't debate. They walked down the line of cars, issuing instructions. Then warnings. Then tickets. The drivers protested quietly. One by one, engines started. Cars pulled away. Karen's smile vanished. "You told them to do this," she accused me. "They parked themselves," I replied. One deputy approached her last. "Ma'am," he said, "this is your final warning. If you continue obstructing this road, you will be detained." She stared at him, eyes blazing. "For what?" "Using a road." He shook his head. "For blocking one." She didn't respond. She just got into her SUV and drove away so fast gravel sprayed up behind her. That night, the county attorney emailed again. Short message. Heavy implication. "The district has approved enforcement action. Please be available tomorrow." I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen. Karen had thrown everything she had at me. Legal threats, public pressure, manufactured emergencies. And now the county was done watching. I went to bed knowing one thing for certain. She wasn't fighting me anymore. She was about to fight the system. And the system doesn't argue. It documents. The next morning, the system arrived in plain white truck. No sirens. No lights. Just logos on doors and people who moved with purpose instead of anger. County code enforcement, public works, and one unmarked sedan that parked a little farther back and stayed running. That one mattered most. I stood on my porch as they gathered at the edge of my road, clipboards out, radios murmuring softly. The lead inspector nodded at me once, a professional acknowledgement, then turned to his team. "Start at the obstruction history," he said. Karen arrived 10 minutes later, late for the first time since this started. She screeched to a stop and climbed out, already shouting before her feet hit the ground. "You are trespassing," she yelled. "This is under legal dispute." The inspector didn't even look at her. She marched straight toward him. "Did you hear me? This road is under injunction." He finally turned. "It's not." She blinked. "Yes, it is." "No," he said calmly. "It was denied. Yesterday. In court." Her mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. "That's impossible," she said. "My lawyer said." "He was wrong," the inspector replied, already writing. She turned toward me like I'd pushed her. "You lied." I didn't answer. They walked the road slowly, photographing everything. The shoulder. The pavement. The disturbed soil where bricks and stakes had been. Every angle. Every detail. It felt clinical, like an autopsy. Then they crossed the boundary. Not onto my property. Onto hers. Karen followed them, voice rising with every step. "You can't inspect HOA land without notice," she said. The inspector stopped and looked at her for the first time like she was a variable instead of a nuisance. "This inspection is for unauthorized construction, obstruction of a county easement, and repeated interference after warning," he said. Notice was given. Multiple times. He gestured toward the unmarked sedan. A woman stepped out. Suit. Badge clipped to her belt. No clipboard. Karen froze. "Ms. Carter," the woman said evenly. "I'm with the district attorney's office." Karen laughed, brittle and loud. "This is ridiculous." The woman didn't smile. "We disagree." They handed Karen a stack of papers. She didn't take them at first. Just stared, scanning the top page like it might change if she refused to touch it. "What is this?" she demanded. "Notice of violation," the inspector said. "An cease order." And this, the woman added, is a formal warning regarding criminal obstruction. Karen's hands shook as she finally grabbed the papers. You can't do this, she said. I represent a community. The woman tilted her head slightly. You represent yourself. That hit harder than anything else had so far. Karen backed away a step, eyes darting between the trucks, the inspectors, the road, and me. This is harassment, she said again, but the word had lost its power. The inspector continued like she wasn't speaking. Any further interference with this easement will result in immediate enforcement. No discretion. Karen's voice dropped to a hiss. You think he's innocent? The woman from the DA's office finally looked at me. Sir, do you have anything you'd like to add? I thought about it. About the bricks, the signs, the cones, the cars, the lies. Yes, I said. I'd like this to stop. She nodded. That's reasonable. Karen snapped. Not loudly. Not theatrically. She just cracked. You're all corrupt, she said. Every one of you. He manipulated this. The inspector closed his folder. Ms. Carter, I suggest you stop talking. She didn't. You don't understand, she said, voice rising again. If I let him do this, others will follow. I lose control. Control. There it was. The woman from the DA's office stepped closer. Control is not a legal interest. Karen laughed weakly. You'll see. They left just after noon. Trucks rolling away one by one, the unmarked sedan last. Karen stood alone at the edge of her property, papers crumpled in her hands, staring at the road like it had betrayed her personally. I thought that would be the end. It wasn't. That evening, a neighbor I barely knew knocked on my door. Older guy. Nervous smile. She's telling people you stole HOA funds, he said quietly. Says the county covered it up. I thanked him and closed the door, already dialing. The DA's office picked up on the first ring. She's escalating, I said. There was a pause. Then a calm reply. We expected that. An hour later, Karen posted again. Longer this time. Names. Accusations. Screenshots taken out of context. She tagged officials. She tagged reporters. She tagged anyone she thought might give her oxygen. By midnight, the post was gone. Removed. So was her HOA admin access. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, heart finally slowing, knowing something fundamental had shifted. Karen wasn't leading a crusade anymore. She was unraveling in public. And the system doesn't punish anger. It waits for patterns. Which meant the next move wouldn't be loud. It would be final. The summons came by courier, not email. That detail mattered more than I expected. Someone had paid extra to make sure it landed in my hands, not my inbox. Heavy envelope. County seal. Signature required. The kind of thing that doesn't ask if you're ready. Inside wasn't a lawsuit against me. It was a notice to appear as a witness. Karen's name was printed in bold at the top. The district attorney had opened a formal case. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, envelope open, coffee untouched, listening to the quiet that finally felt earned. No engines idling outside. No surprise cones. No phones buzzing with threat. Just stillness. Karen, apparently, had not taken stillness well. Over the next few days, the details started leaking out, not from gossip but from paperwork. A neighbor who worked in records tipped me off gently. Another sent screenshots they probably shouldn't have had access to. I didn't ask questions. I didn't need to. Karen had removed survey markers, obstructed a county easement multiple times after warning, filed knowingly false statements, and attempted to use HOA authority where none existed. That alone was enough to hurt. But it wasn't enough to end her. What ended her was the money. The county audit turned up something she never expected anyone to look for. HOA funds used for emergency infrastructure mitigation, rental equipment, printing costs, legal consultations that never went through the board, thousands of dollars spent unilaterally. Her justification was always the same: community safety. That phrase had covered everything until it didn't. The HOA board called an emergency meeting of their own. Not the performative kind Karen liked. The quiet kind. Closed doors. Lawyers present. Karen wasn't invited. She found out anyway. I know because she showed up at my gate that evening. No blazer this time. No clipboard. Just jeans, a hoodie, and a face that looked older than it had a week ago. She didn't shout. Didn't film. Didn't threaten. She just stood there. I need you to talk to them, she said. I didn't answer right away. They're saying things, she continued. Lies. I leaned against the fence, keeping distance. They're saying what happened. Her eyes flicked away. You don't understand how this works. I understand exactly how this works, I replied. You tried to control something you didn't own. She shook her head slowly. If you'd just cooperated. That word again. Cooperated. As if compliance would have made this reasonable. You built a wall across my road, I said. At dawn. Her voice cracked. Just slightly. I was protecting order. I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time I didn't see entitlement. I saw fear. The kind that comes from realizing authority only exists as long as people believe in it. You don't get to decide order for everyone, I said. She swallowed. They're talking about charges. I nodded. They warned you. She stepped closer. If you testify. I straightened. I will. The word hung between us like a door slamming shut. Her shoulders sagged. You're enjoying this? No, I said. I'm relieved. She laughed weakly, then turned and walked away without another word. The hearing was brief. Karen sat at the defense table, smaller than I remembered, hands folded tightly. No outbursts. No speeches. Just silence while documents spoke for her. The judge didn't look angry. He looked disappointed. She was removed from any HOA position effective immediately. Barred from acting on its behalf. Ordered to repay misused funds. Charged with misdemeanor obstruction, with additional penalties suspended pending compliance. The county permanently reaffirmed the easement. Recorded it again. Filed it twice. Redundant. Unmistakable. When it was over, Karen didn't look at me as deputies escorted her out. She stared straight ahead, like eye contact might make it real. I walked out into the afternoon sun feeling something unexpected. Not victory. Closure. That evening, the road was quiet. No signs. No markers. Just asphalt leading where it always had. A neighbor drove by slowly and waved. Another stopped to apologize for not speaking up sooner. I slept that night without my phone on the nightstand for the first time in weeks. But there was still one thing left. Karen hadn't faced the consequence she feared most yet. And it was coming. The last consequence didn't arrive with a gavel or a badge. It came in the form of a moving truck. I noticed it early one morning, parked outside Karen's house, hazard lights blinking quietly like an apology. No drama. No audience. Just cardboard boxes, a rented dolly, and a woman I barely recognized directing strangers through a life she was packing up. Word travels fast in places like this, especially when someone falls from a position they invented for themselves. The HOA board had made it official the night before. Karen was no longer welcome in any leadership role, present or future. They'd settled quietly, paid what they owed, and rewritten their bylaws with language so specific it might as well have been addressed directly to her. No individual authority. No emergency powers. No unilateral action. Her house went on the market 2 days later. The sign went up facing inward, not toward the road, like she couldn't bring herself to let it look at me. I watched from my porch as she supervised the movers, arms folded, jaw tight, eyes fixed on anything but the access road she'd tried to erase. At one point, she looked over. We locked eyes. She didn't glare. Didn't sneer. Didn't pretend. She looked tired. For a second, I considered walking over. Saying something neutral. Offering closure. Then I remembered the bricks. The signs. The lies. The way she'd smiled standing on my road like conquest was a personality trait. I stayed where I was. By noon, the truck was loaded. Karen climbed into the passenger seat, not the driver's, and the vehicle pulled away without ceremony. No last speech. No final warning. Just distance. The county came by later that week, one final time. They repaved the section of road where the bricks had been, smoothed it clean, and painted fresh lines like nothing had ever happened. The supervisor handed me a document, stamped and signed. Permanent affirmation of access. Any obstruction would trigger immediate enforcement without notice. I thanked him, and he nodded like this was the ending he'd expected all along. Life settled back into something resembling normal. Mornings were quiet again. Evenings passed without incident. The HOA stayed in its lane, literally and figuratively. Neighbors waved. A few stopped by to talk, carefully at first, then more comfortably as time passed. Months later, I learned Karen had moved 3 towns over. New HOA. New start. Same rules, I imagined, though hopefully enforced by someone else this time. I didn't feel satisfaction when I heard. Just distance. The road remained what it had always been. A strip of asphalt. A way in. A way out. But every time I drove down it, I remembered the morning I'd woken up to a wall and a woman who thought she could rewrite reality with enough confidence. She couldn't. Because power doesn't come from clipboards or fake titles or shouting the loudest. It comes from understanding where your authority ends. Karen never did. And by the time she learned, the county crew had already torn it apart by noon.